So today is going to be an introduction to the flow movements. How we do them, why we do them, and how you incorporate them in your daily training. In addition to that, we're also going to try to go over the first of my foundational flow movements, which I don't really have a name for right now, but tentatively we're going to go with the grappler until a better name comes along. So the first thing to consider when doing your flow movements is band selection. So normally my bands range from about a 1/2 inch all the way up to 2 to 2.5 inches even. There's no right or wrong, it's a spectrum, but generally speaking, the heavier and slower the flow, obviously the thicker band you're going to want to use for safety and effectiveness. So for this, the grapplers, it's a fairly heavy movement. It's not the heaviest one that I do, but it's fairly heavy. So I like to go with at least an 1.5 inch band for these. The second thing to consider is how you attach it for safety. So the first thing you want to do is examine the band and make sure there's no tears or frays in it. Make sure it wasn't kept outside so it's brittle. A normal healthy band should be able to stretch quite a bit and be very safe. And for the attachment, the other danger to flows is if you attach it on something sharp that can cut it. So the easiest way to do this is just pick a nice rubber handle here that you find in most gyms, and you just loop the band around itself. It's very simple. And then just cinch it tight, and it's good to go. As far as cable stack height goes, there's no right or wrong here, but generally you want the cable stack for most flows somewhere between your knees and your chest. Now obviously the higher or lower is going to affect the nature of the movement. We can talk about that later, but it doesn't make it right or wrong. It'll just give you a slightly different feel in the flow. So the flows might look entirely different, but there's similarities between each flow. There's commonalities. So let's start with the grip. So I see a lot of people doing it just by grabbing the band, which is okay. It's very uncomfortable though. And also a lot of times you're limited more by your grip strength than by your core strength. So what I like to do is I like to put my hand all the way through it, and then I kind of death grip right there, making sure that most of the weight is supported by my wrist here. And then what that also lets me do is I can turn my hand freely throughout the course of the movement. So the next thing is the secondary grip here. You want to make sure that you grab it normally about halfway down the band, and that you can keep tension on the band and stack your elbow when you're going to need to. That's going to be important later. So after I get a good grip, what I do is I back up until the weight stack comes off, and it's not clanking every time. So when you finish your flow movement at the end range, you don't want the weight stack to really clank down. So I make sure the weight stack is pulled off, and then I go ahead and pull it in and grab it where I'm going to want to. After these things, the most important thing is foot placement. So this is your pivot foot, or your anchor foot right here. You want to make sure that's internally rotated and your heel is off the ground so your knee can swivel throughout the movement. What happens is I see a lot of people have their heel anchored and their toes pointed that way, and then when they turn, that knee gets cranked on. It's uncomfortable. It's not entirely safe. So we have to get it out of our minds that our heels always have to be anchored. In athletic movements, a lot of times your heel needs to be, and it should be off of the ground, and you should get comfortable with having that heel off the ground. It's going to protect your knees and ankles. So we get the grip going, get tension on the band, we back out, we make sure that foot is nice and knife edge. So knife edge means that the weight is on the inside edge of the foot. You're not flat footed, so you're driving into the ground. Then you want to take a shoulder width stance. So right here, it's the knife edge there. Here, you're knife edging on the outside of this foot. Your hip bone is stacked here. After that happens, what you're going to do is you're going to let your thumb internally rotate and let your back round. Another thing is you don't always need a flat back in movements. Let your back round. That is the full extended position. You're going to start with a good pull, pulling your shoulder blades back, pulling your back into extension. And while you do that, you're going to supinate and pull in and hold, just like this. You're going to hold this position. This movement will get faster and faster as you get better at it. After that, you're going to take this hand and you're going to go straight down on it, just like this. This is also the beginning to another flow, but from here it's going to be a little different. So as long as you're stacked here, then you're going to continue to pull here. As you push here, you're going to rotate this back leg, this back knee, so it's pointed in the direction you want to push, and you're going to pull and push straight through and hold a stable position. On the way back, you're going to let this hand come back, but you're going to keep tension with this hand. So as this gets here, this arm is forced to work too, and then you're just going to return to the start position. So I'm going to go through a little faster on 3 more reps. Pull, transition, continue pull, press straight through. Round back, internally rotate, flat back, push straight through, You want tight abs. When you do this, you don't want your chest up to the ceiling. You want your abs drawn in, everything facing forward. A lot of people look at these flows and they think rotation. Your body might be rotating, but the line of pull is straight. So I see a lot of people, when they do things similar to this, what they want to do is they want to come around their body. When you hit a baseball, you don't swing around. What you do is you rotate your body, but then you swing through the ball, right? So these are very similar. So what you're going to do is you're going to grab that band, you're going to rotate, your line of pull is going to be straight. So now I want to go over how to adjust this exercise in case you have an injured knee, foot, or ankle. I get a lot of questions about that. But first, I had forgotten to cover something. I want to talk about the weight selection. So just like any normal exercise, the weight is determined based on your personal strength, obviously, and your comfort with the movement. So the movement I just showed you, the grappler, that can be done either as a light flow movement, a moderate movement for slightly higher reps, or a very heavy movement if you're very comfortable with it. I would suggest, though, you start with a weight that you feel very comfortable with, that isn't very challenging, seems like common sense, and do the movement slowly at first. Focus on piece by piece, starting with the grip and the foot placement, practice the knife edging, and then just kind of flow those together and pick up speed as you become more comfortable with the movement. Remember, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. As far as the weight selection on the stack goes with the band, the reason that we attach it to the cable stack is to where there are limitations on the elasticity of the band. So what we're gonna do is use the full elasticity of the band in relation to your personal strength. And when you feel like you can't, with good form, continue through a full range of motion, that is when you want the weight stack to start to move. So it's just something that helps you continue the movement through a full range of motion. You'll find that at least half of my band exercises are in combination with a weight stack. So now we're gonna go into how to accommodate this movement in case you have an injured foot. So let's say I have an injured knee, ankle, or foot on this side. The reason it hurts your knee is because your knee is not the anchor point, your foot is. So that foot being the anchor point creates torsion or torque on the knee. So we just take that element out. And we do that, if you can, if your knee doesn't hurt to even touch it, by just placing your knee on something soft and letting your foot freely rotate throughout the movement. So what you're gonna do, you might have to lower the weight a little bit. You get the same setup. Make sure the knee is at a good angle here, so you're not getting one to pull towards the weight stack. See how it's creating this nice angle, gives me some good leverage. I'm on, just like I knife edge my foot, now I knife edge the inside knee into the pad. I get some good tension going. I sink my hips a little bit. I pull, I drive straight through, just like we did on 2 feet. And just like that, you can do a flow even with an injured knee or ankle. So this was the first in a long series of flow movements I'm gonna be releasing for you guys. Just let me know if there's anything I went over that you're unclear about in the comments, and I can dedicate a little time either in the comments or in the next instructional video on those aspects that you're unclear about. Also, the grappler is a working title. I am open to your guys' suggestions on renaming. I want everybody to be part of the process. It'd be pretty cool if you suggested something and that's what stuck. So right now we're going with the grappler. You guys got better names. The only parameters though, it has to be 3 words or less and it can't be profane. Other than that, I'm open to anything.